Today we're going to talk about prep sanding logs, basically. And when we come into the shop, the first thing we want to have is our safety glasses. Safety glasses are always to be worn in the shop whenever we're operating the tools. Put my glasses on. And we're back in the finish room today. We happen to have the steps for the task that we're going to work on, sanding lung parts. So really the first thing we need to know is we need to know what type of finish that we're going to sand for that particular log. And the place to find that is on the work order. The work order says the name of the product, but then it also says the type of finish. Peeled aspen is the type of finish. The other option is unpeeled and peeled. These are the examples in the back room of the two different finishes. Basically with the peeled, we sand a little deeper into the wood so it gets a little lighter. With the unpeeled, we do remove the outer bark, but we don't want to sand as deep into the wood. We want to leave those darker colors intact as much as possible. So let's go for the first step here, which is step number one. We're going to trim knots at the bandsaw. Here's our bandsaw. Pretty basic piece of equipment. Your start button, your stop button. We also have an option of using dust collection. Dust collection is hooked up to the bandsaw. We've got a few safety procedures. We want to keep clear off our cuts from the saw often, meaning we don't want a bunch of offcuts to build up around the table and just leave them there and just keep cutting. But when you remove those cuts, you want to shut the blade off first. You don't want your hands around a moving blade. Also, it's always better to hold the workpiece with two hands, and like I mentioned, safety glasses in the shop at all times. So I'm going to turn the bandsaw on. I'm going to grab this log with two hands and be really careful. Honestly, this bandsaw was probably not intended to be cutting logs because of the ground. And I'm just going to walk my log up to the blade, make that cut. I want to cut pretty close to flush with the log. So I'm going to go along and I'm going to keep it on. I'm going to take it off. And I've got a really firm grip on my log. And when I get about over halfway, I want to flip my log around. Otherwise, it's going to be a little dangerous. I don't want my hands too close to that blade. And I also got to know that as I'm pushing this log along the table, it could drop off on me. So I gotta really be prepared for that. Looks like we got most of them. Anything that's really small bumps we can get with the sander. That's basically, we come back to our sheet over here. We're gonna peel and remove the outer bark. So we're working with aspen wood. It's very soft, it's very easy to peel, but we don't want to peel so deep into the wood that we remove all the nice character, like these worm tracks. That's what people love, is these worm tracks. But one thing we cannot have is this thick layer of bark, because over time, if we were to leave this in a piece of furniture, it's going to flake off on the customer, and that's not acceptable. So what I've got here in my hand is a draw knife. This is a pretty small one. Most draw knives, the way you use them, you're going to pull them towards you. This particular one works best with the bevel side facing up. Most of the other knives work best with the bevel facing down. Now you could use it this way down, but it seems to be more comfortable facing up. I've got my log here set up on a sawhorse in our little board against the wall, and I'm going to peel my log against the wall, and it's going to be supported here. And what I'm doing is I'm just trying to peel this outer bark off. I just want to lightly go over it. And I'll rotate my log around. And we know we're going to sand this log light, so it's okay to dig in a little bit, but like I said, we don't want to go too crazy because we want to try to maintain as much of the cool character that's underneath as possible. So I'm just pulling the knife towards me carefully, looking at that thick outer layer of bark. So once I get about 3/4 of the way, I'll flip my log around and hit the other end of it. Really, one of the keys to getting good with the draw knife is getting comfortable with at what angle are you going to hold that draw knife. If you hold it too upright, you're going to dig in too much. If you hold it too flat, you're not going to catch any material at all. So that's really the key. Every log's a little different. There's some logs, if they look gray like this, you may not have to put a draw knife on it at all. This one didn't need a lot of work. It was pretty quick. But that's pretty good for the draw knife. Knots or the imperfections on the drum sander. So here we have our drum sander behind us. This is our drum sander. This is our flap sander or flap wheel. We're going to turn this on, and everywhere that I cut a knot, or if I see a knot, I'm going to come up to the drum sander and smooth it out. You can see the rough marks that the bandsaw leaves. I'm just going to come up to it, smooth it out, hit all the knots, like so. So here I go. I'm going to flip it around at the other side. Or if there was anything else that was sticking up or that's a little bit rough, I'm going to hit it with the drum sander. And I'm going to do it enough where I get rid of 100% of the marks that the bandsaw left. Like so. But I don't want to leave this big, huge white spots everywhere if possible. So I think that's good for the drum sander. We're going to flap sand the log with the 100 grit. So here's our 100 grit flap wheel. We've got 2 flap wheels, both with 100 grit on them. We've designated one for log work, one for case work. Log work tends to be a little harder on the sandpaper, so that's why we try to keep them separate. This is a pretty simple machine. It's really handy. It's great for sanding contours. So it's great for sanding these logs in these irregular shape like we've got. But you got to be careful. You got to be careful how close you get to this thing. If you had a long, loose shirt on here, it could grab your shirt. So you need to be careful of that. We want to make sure our blast gate is open. Right now we've got dust collection off so you can hear me, but normally we would have dust collection on. It does suck up some of the dust, but not 100% of it. Definitely want hearing protection on as well. This is a very loud tool. So here I go. One pass, go about close to halfway, and then rotate it just a little bit. Shades of darker color, but overall we want that light look. So that's all we're going to do with the 100 grit. Back to the 150. And the 150 is going to be real quick. It's going to be more of just a polishing. going a lot faster, obviously, with this because I know I've already done the bulk of the sanding. We're just trying to smooth it up a little. That's it. There we have our peeled aspen sanded log.